Hi, everybody. I'm Gary Sherwin, and today we are going to take you to one of my favorite places in all of Newport Beach. It's listed on the National Historic Register of Places. It's also the site of some magic memories created by a very prominent Newport Beach family. Maybe you've seen it, but you haven't been in it. What is it? We'll take you there on The Backstory. It's no secret that John Wayne was clearly one of the most famous residents ever to live here in Newport Beach. Had a beautiful home here in Newport Harbor where he and his family spent many years making terrific memories. But one of his most prized possessions is right behind me, the historic Wild Goose. And we're going to take you on board right now. Well, here we are on the Wild Goose, John Wayne's private yacht for 18 years. Right up until he passed away in 1979, he owned this boat. Now we're going to go into the fireplace room. And boy, can you feel the presence of the Duke here. Well, here we are in the fireplace room. It's actually called the main salon, and it's the heart here of the Wild Goose. But you know, we wanted to find out, what was it like with John Wayne on this boat? What kind of history occurred here? So we decided to go to the ultimate source, and that is the captain of the Wild Goose during John Wayne's ownership, Bert Mitchell. Bert, come on over here. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Hey, welcome back to the Wild Goose.
Feels good. I love being on here.
So tell us, how did you meet John Wayne? I understand there's a legend about how you first got acquainted and how you met.
Right. I came through this doorway and shook the Duke's hand. I didn't call him Duke in those days. It was always Mr. Wayne. So we BS'd for a few minutes, and then I went to leave or back up, and Duke looks at my shoes and he goes, and I was so shocked I brought my foot back a little. So he missed my shoe, but that was my introduction to John Wayne.
Quite an introduction. Now, how long were you with the Duke?
16,
Come on over here.
16 years altogether.
16 years.
Well, I was on the boat in the beginning of 63, October, sorry. And then I was with him till he died in 79.
And he had the boat up until just a few months before he passed away.
Correct.
Now, Bert, you actually got very close to the Wayne family throughout all this. You were, of course, on this boat every time they went out and went to Catalina or Alaska or some of the other places. So you actually saw the Wayne kids grow up.
I was like a nanny on board, as well as being the deckhand to start with. So I was kind of running herd on the kids. They'd be running all over the boat. There's a little carpenter shop on that side forward, and I used to make little toy boats for them. And I tell a story in my book about Ethan coming to me one day, and I said, "Ethan, what happened to the boat I made you last week?" "Oh, it sank." He said, "Well, we know the wood doesn't sink." So of course I had to make him another boat. And then when Marisa came along, I'd make boats for her.
So what did the Wild Goose mean to John Wayne? I mean, you obviously saw him here relaxing and playing, having fun. What did this boat mean?
He just missed by one place getting in Annapolis. He wanted to be in the Navy. He may have ended up as an admiral instead of an actor. So the first boat he bought was a 73-foot power boat. It's called the Nor'Wester. And later on he decided he wanted a bigger, more impressive boat. So when he found this for sale, he bought this thing.
So this is actually a decommissioned World War II minesweeper. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then it was converted into a private yacht then by somebody before John Wayne bought it. Is that correct?
Max Wyman was a multimillionaire from Seattle in the lumber business. And the boat was originally called La Beverie, I think, French. And Max changed it to Wild Goose. Well, actually called it Wild Goose 2. And then when Duke bought it, he did away with the 2 and just called it Wild Goose.
That's great. That's great. So tell us about this room we're in here right now. What was it used for?
Well, this used to be 2 rooms. There was a bulkhead probably about here. So there was a dividing wall. So this was the small main salon, and this was the Duke's bedroom, or master stateroom. So when we got back from Europe, with Duke being so tall, 6'4.5", he had to walk down the side decks like this, his head down. So he wanted a new cabin with 6'8" headroom. So with me being a carpenter, we hired 5 other carpenters. We had 6 carpenters working for 6 months, January through to June, putting all these new beams in. And the roof has been fiberglass to make it completely waterproof. That was my first experience with fiberglass, and I didn't like it. It was stinky and sticky.
So tell us now, this mural. This is a pretty dramatic mural. I understand. So John Wayne actually had that installed.
Originally, they were black and white pictures, and they were taken from a big, thick volume on sea battles, and he liked this one. So I guess he had the pictures blowing up at the studios. And then later on, he had Ray Kellogg, one of his buddies that was in the makeup department, I think, or scene shifters or whatever. He came down and spent a week coloring it, and then we'd seal it with clear varnish so water wouldn't affect it.
Wow. So now it looks like one big mural, but it's actually 2 just kind of flipped, right?
Right, yeah.
So if you cut it in half, it's almost symmetrical then, if you know, half of it here and the same half over there, right?
That's correct, yeah.
It's beautiful.
But,
so now I understand this table is pretty historic too. Now it looks like a ordinary wooden table, dining room table, but it probably was a poker table, wasn't it?
well, that's what most people think, that he was a poker player. I never saw him play poker once in 16 years. It was always bridge, mostly bridge, and he'd always invite 1 or 2 couples to make up the bridge game. They'd spend all day. Sometimes he might take a break and dive in off the stern, and no matter where we were in Catalina or Mexico, he'd dive in, come to the surface, and Jesus Christ, it's cold.
So now who sat at this table? Who are some of the names?
He had a lot of business associates that we invite on, people from the studios, like Hugh O'Brien.
So this really, this was really a place for him to take refuge with his family, more than a place to entertain a lot of celebrity friends, right?
Right. He'd spend all day and all evening. He used to go to bed early, about 8, but the rest of the time he's sitting here just playing cards, bridge mostly.
Is this one of the places that was one of his favorites here on the ship?
Right. Chess was another favorite game of his. And I was never into chess, so I didn't play.
You didn't play him, huh?
No.
Now, would he normally have one of his favorite drinks here as well?
Yeah. When I first joined the boat, his favorite drink was brandy on the rocks. But then after about 10 years, he switched to Mexican tequila, Commemorative tequila. And I remember being at his house one time, 5 o'clock, talked to I had ship's business papers. And he said, "Hey, do you want a drink?" I said, "Sure." I wasn't going to wimp out in front of John Wayne. So he mixed me this neat tequila. He says, "You want some water in it?" "Yeah, please add some water to it." So I'm struggling trying to get this down, but I wasn't going to wimp out, in front of Wayne.
So how many trips do you think you went with John Wayne on this boat?
Oh, gosh, I'd say hundreds.
Hundreds? Wow.
Catalina, lots of weekends. We'd leave for Mexico around sometimes November, and sometimes spend 5 months down there, mainly because the skipper at the time, Jack Headley, he liked Mexico. But mostly it was about 2 or 3 months in Mexico. And he'd be filming in Durango. So the idea was he could fly to the Mazatlan and then use the boat. But he usually ended up working Saturdays, so he didn't have the time to fly to join the boat. After 11 years of working on the boat, I was at the house after I'd taken over as skipper. He says, "Call me Duke when you're off the boat." But I could never get used to calling him Duke.
Too familiar, huh?
Mr. Wayne,
Mr. Wayne, always Mr. Wayne.
Yeah, while he was on board. Yeah.
Wow.
We used to, especially in Seattle, places north, we'd get the fireplace going. I remember one time I had trouble getting it fired up, so I had newspapers in there and sticks. And I thought, I'll fix it. So I go to the paint locker, got some paint thinner, might have been gasoline, I'm not sure. Probably paint thinner. So I put some in a cup or something and threw the stuff in. The whole thing exploded in my face. The dumb trick I did.
John Wayne didn't see you do that, did he?
No.
So you got to have a favorite John Wayne story. Of all the years you worked with him, one story that sits out in your memory.
I'd made a wooden sea sled to tow the children behind the ski boat. It was about 4 feet long, maybe 5, with a padded top. And the children liked to sit on or kneel on and hold a rope so they could stay on the raft. And I'd tow it about 20 miles an hour behind the ski boat. Well, we were somewhere in Mexico. I can't remember what bay we were in. And I'm running out of fuel, so I slowed down to put more gas in the ski boat. Duke's on the top deck, aft, and he cups his hands like this and says, "I'm going to shoot 4 people if Maritza gets hurt on that thing." He was going to shoot me, Aisa, maybe Ethan. So
Ethan, his son.
Yeah.
Aisa, his daughter.
Right. So I told the kids to cool it. We'll do something else the rest of the day. It was getting later on in the afternoon. So the next morning, my job in the first thing in the morning was to mop the decks down, mop the morning dew on this main deck and plus the top deck. So I'm dipping my mop in the bucket, and Duke comes out of his stateroom and liked to walk about 20 times around the cabin for a little exercise. So he came up to me and says, "Bert, I want to apologize for losing my temper with you yesterday." And I mumbled something like, "Don't worry about it, sir." He said, "Well, I do worry about it because I like you very much."
Wow, that's great.
That felt good.
Well, that's great. So now, Bert, you're going to take us down to the engine room, because I understand the engine room is really pretty interesting because they don't make engines like this anymore.
The original Jimmy's 268A is the model number, and they were originally locomotive engines. But I've got a nice story.
Well, let's go see. So we're heading down to the engine room. But, something I've been wanting to ask you, Bert. So you had all your weekends busy with John Wayne here on the boat. Do you have a personal life? I mean, what were you doing? You were, 30 years old or so?
Well, the first thing I did was join a dancing school, Arthur Murray, up in, Garden Grove. Originally, my brother said, "Let's go to night school and learn Spanish." Well, I went 3 times and got bored with trying to learn Spanish, so I'm going dancing instead so I can meet more girls. So that worked out pretty good.
Now, did he have any help here that helped your dating life?
Yeah, well, you had the maids. I had a good thing going with all the maids for 16 years.
So you dated the help, huh?
Until one day, after Duke died, Ethan let me into a little secret. He said, we hired one maid. She was German, good-looking, attractive German gal, Petra. So she wouldn't have anything to do with me. And years later, Ethan said, "I think I ruined it for you with Petra, because I told her that you take all the maids out."
The man about town. Okay, let's go see the engine room, Bert.
Love to. So, this is my brother Ken's
Great.
main.
Terrific.
Go inside.
Let's go inside.
Okay.
Wow, here we are, the engine room. Bert, it's like old times, huh?
It feels good. I'd like to go to Seattle right now.
Now, you spent a lot of time down here. Is that correct?
Well, not really. My brother was down here most of the time.
And your brother, what did he do specifically?
Well, made sure everything was running smoothly and no leaks.
He was like an engineer.
But if it was rough, he'd get seasick. And he'd be walking around here with a bucket to throw up in while he's doing his chores.
So, Bert, tell us what we're looking at here.
Oh, well, these are the original locomotive engines before the war. And they converted them, modernized them for the Navy minesweepers. They were, I've forgotten how many cylinders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 cylinder. The piston is about that yay big. And they had to be overhauled every 3 years to meet the Navy specs. And it would take about 6 weeks for my brother, and he'd use the help of the steward, Joffrey. So it would take roughly 6 weeks to complete the overhaul on both engines.
Wow.
We'd send the blocks out, and the valve blocks, I guess, this part.
Wow.
And he just reassembled it again.
Wow. Well, we're also here today with Fernando Garduno. So you're the first officer here.
Yeah.
And this ship is pretty much as it was from an engine perspective when John Wayne owned it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Hornblower goes to great lengths to act as stewards for the boat and operate the boat in a way that would keep the Duke happy. He was big on keeping all the original naval equipment on board. So we do everything we can to keep the stuff going, and we take great lengths to make sure that if we can find parts or have to have some stuff fabricated to keep some of this old stuff going, we make sure we get it done.
That's got to be a costly proposition, because it would have been easier to get more efficient engines here a long time ago, I suspect, right?
I think so, but it's the last thing the Duke would have wanted. And, it's a historical ship. She's been to war. She's been all over the world. And to be honest with you, she runs great. I mean, there's really no need to replace them as far as we're concerned.
Okay, so tell me what we're looking at around here. So these are the main engines, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, those are the mains. They're 500 horsepower aside. Some folks will probably recognize the telegraph here from the movies and whatnot. And, in the movies, you'll hear the captain saying, all full ahead, port engine, this or that. All the telegraph is doing is sending a message down to an engineer here in the engine room and telling the engineer how to, either put the boat into a stern propulsion or forward propulsion and then adjust the throttle. We've got the throttles right here. We don't operate off of this at all. We've got some modern equipment from the 1980s, electronic shifters, but if they were to go down, we would rely on the telegraph system. And I would come down into the engine room, take this lever up to the 12 o'clock position. That's basically neutral. If the captain tells me he wants to go ahead, I would go ahead and answer his command and then shift the boat into forward. And that's our backup control system.
Wow. Well, it's really something being down here. And I can only imagine that on modern boats, I don't know, would this pass code inspection nowadays with all these wires and things running through it? I mean, Fernando is you've got to get special coverage for being able to have this kind of stuff, right?
No, we're actually very strictly regulated by the Coast Guard. It's being a wooden boat. This vessel is under a much greater degree of, and due to the age, a much higher degree of scrutiny than your average charter vessel. So we go through annual inspections every year by the Coast Guard. We have to haul her out every year. A couple of our other vessels are newer, steel hull. They only have to be hauled out once every other year. So the Coast Guard is intimately familiar with every inch of this vessel, and we keep her in great shape. We've got a really, really good maintenance crew, and we've got an owner who just absolutely loves the boat. And
that's Terry McRae from Hornblower Dining and Events, or Cruises and Events.
Correct, absolutely. So we're lucky. We've got a guy who's a big John Wayne fan, and he believes he's just a steward of the boat, and John Wayne's really the owner, and we try and maintain it to a standard and keep it going that the Duke would be proud of.
So Bert, we're going to take you up now to where you probably spent a lot of time up here at the top of the boat, keeping it steering in the right direction. So we're going to have a little bit of a homecoming for you, okay?
I'd love to.
Okay, let's do it. Wow, we are in John Wayne's bedroom, the original bedroom. And Fernando, I guess this is pretty much as it was when John Wayne was here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Original furnishings, the easy chair over there, the dresser, the bed, the stuff that, the TV came in the 80s. That painting matches the one in the fireplace. Doesn't match it exactly, but he had it commissioned by the same artist. He was a big, big fan of the ocean and the sea, and obviously the Goose played a huge role in that. So you'll recognize some of this artwork if you go down into the fireplace room. The Duke did not have any pictures of himself or his movies and stuff like that on board. Family photos, yes, but not stuff regarding his films and whatnot. But it's largely intact. The way this is exactly how it would have looked in 1975 if you came strolling in here.
Amazing. And then there's of course a very large bathroom adjacent to this too that he would have used. And then his kids had a stateroom just adjacent to this as well.
Correct. And the rooms connect, so the kids' bunk room has direct access to the Duke's stateroom. And I'm sure Bert will tell you what they used to do with the kids is they'd lock them in there at night if they were out at sea or on the anchor, so they wouldn't have to worry about them falling overboard.
They would have to walk through this room in order to get out.
Yeah, that way if they couldn't get out without the Duke knowing about it, or if one of them had a bad dream or something, they could just walk right through here without having to go out on the side decks.
Wow. Well, this is another one of those rooms where you really kind of, I don't know, feel the ghost of John Wayne, but you certainly feel his presence here, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And when I'm walking around during a charter doing my rounds, I get stopped here and asked all kinds of questions. There's always people gazing here, and they're always staring at the bed, like,
what happened there?
Yeah. You can smell the wood burning sometimes. So.
Well, the ship has a very vibrant life today, as well as it did all those many years ago. Sarah is with Hornblower. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us a little of what the ship's doing right now that Hornblower has owned it now for a number of years and has been a good caretaker of it. What kind of events transpire here?
Oh my gosh, well she certainly is the jewel in our crown here in Newport Beach. We're very proud of her. Many different corporate events, a lot of weddings with athletes have got married on board here. Being so close to Hollywood, a lot of rap parties that are held here. I remember an event with Barbra Streisand, which was fun for me to see her on board. So, and then we do some public cruises too, where guests are lucky enough to find out that they'll be on John Wayne's yacht for the evening, which is incredibly special to be that close to a movie star and to be in kind of his presence. So lots of fun events, and she's much loved here in the harbor for sure.
Now, she pretty much stays in the harbor when you take most of the cruises, right?
We do. We like to keep everything very calm for everybody. You know, we use silverware, glassware, a lot of high-end events, so it's important for our guests that are comfortable. Sometimes the captain will poke his nose out, poke her bow out just to kind of see the sights, but yeah, it just keeps within the harbor. But I mean, my gosh, we go past where John Wayne used to live, where she was docked. And guests are very interested to know that he convalesced on board. This is where he chose to convalesce when he was so sick. So, yeah.
She's got to be one of the biggest ships here in the harbor.
Oh, for sure. And when we go out, I love it, and I tell my clients on board to watch, because a lot of it, you almost get like a flotilla kind of behind you and coming up and looking up, and they get to wave and have that moment of feeling that, they may be owning this ship and, looking down and waving, being able to be on board. Yeah, very special.
Sarah, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to join Bert now in the Wheelhouse, so let's go check it out. Okay, so we're in the Wheelhouse. Welcome back to the Wheelhouse, Bert. Always feels at home here?
Thank you, Gary. I love being next to that wheel. A lot of happy memories here.
Now, you wrote about your experiences here on the Wild Goose. You co-authored a book about 10 years ago, On Board with the Duke. It's got some wonderful stories, some great photos. And if anyone wants to order a copy, all they have to do is call Hornblower, the Newport Beach office, and they can buy it. But this really tells your story of what it was like being here on the ship, right?
That's right. From the time I left England and crossed the Atlantic, and I remember we were approaching the Panama Canal. We overheard on the ship's radio that Kennedy had just been shot. Pete Stein was in tears. The captain didn't mean much to me, being English, but I'll never forget that.
Wow. And then most recently, there is a brand new John Wayne biography, John Wayne Life and Legend. It just came out, I think, within the last month or two. Right. Scott Eyman, who sounds like he had some connection with John Wayne, but it's a fascinating book, and it talks a lot about his life here in Newport Beach, and you're featured in it prominently.
4 or 5 times I mentioned my name, yeah, and they took excerpts from my other book, the book On Board with the Duke.
Are you amazed? Okay, so John Wayne has been gone now more than 30 years, and yet here we have a bestseller biography on him. He really was a larger-than-life figure, wasn't he?
He was. I was always amazed at the size of the guy. He had tiny feet, but big hands. I think he took a size 10 and a half shoe, which is not that big.
Wow.
But
a true American legend in that regard.
Book. I took it to bed the other night at 11 o'clock. I jumped in bed, started reading, and I read it right through to 4 o'clock in the morning. Wow. Before I stopped reading.
Wow. So now tell us about the Wheelhouse here. And what was here, and obviously there have been some changes since you were here
Yeah.
in modern technology.
This is the original helm, and the only person allowed to touch the polished brass would be Duke.
Not even you.
No, well, I used to polish it, so I didn't want anybody touching it. So we used to steer just by using the spokes. And then all this woodwork, this wasn't here. There were two original Navy pedestals here about yay high, with the throttles on one and the gear shifts on the other one.
Wow.
So when I was maneuvering, I'd have to run across, look up over the side, see where the hell we were, run back over here, look over the side. I was doing a ballet back and forth.
Wow. So
And-
you were running back and forth when you're trying to.
Well,
navigate.
once we got underway, then
Right.
it was cool. But docking and undocking, we had to do that.
Pre-computers.
Right.
Yes. Didn't have any of that. So I mean, some
Oh.
of these things are still original, right?
This is the original Navy compass
Compass.
and gyro compass, but we never used that. We just used the modern compass here. There used to be a little button somewhere around here that you could change course. Once it was plugged in, instead of turning the wheel, you could just turn the little knob, and the ship would go either way.
Sort of like autopilot almost.
This is interesting. This is the original chair that was bought for Pete Stein back in the mid-'60s. And I'm just amazed how this vinyl's lasted. I mean, this is almost 50 years old. So when I was on watch, I'd stand up here, excuse me, sit up here, and it was just the right distance, that door jamb. I could put my feet up here. In fact, Jack Headley had me paint a line on that window, line up and down, so it would represent the bow of the ship, and he didn't have to get up, he'd just sit here. And you could tell if we were going to hit something by just looking at that painted line.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now, Bert, you were also here during another historic moment, and that's when Barbara Walters came aboard. She did the very last interview with John Wayne before he passed away, and she did it right here on the Goose. And in fact, I think there's a photo of her sitting in this chair with John Wayne steering the boat. But you were here during that whole interview, right?
Yeah, we were underway, cruising down this channel behind us, and I remember Duke was standing where you are, and he told me to get in touch with the cook, Billy. He said, have Billy bring 2 coffees up, and have him put something in my coffee. I don't run a tight ship, or something like that. So, yeah, they did the interview right here on the wing of the bridge.
Now, she just retired, as we know, and she said that one of the interviews that she thinks was most important in her entire career, and she's done a lot of them, was interviewing John Wayne, and part of it was here on the Wild Goose. That must be pretty significant to be a part of broadcasting history like that.
Yeah, they show it now and again on TV, and I always get a kick out of seeing her with the Duke.
Now, you got shot in that, right? You're steering the boat, is that correct?
Yeah, I had that window slid down for the cameraman, and he was facing me when Duke told me to tell Billy to bring 2 coffees up. Yeah. But
So how was Barbara Walters? Nice?
I was surprised how cute she was.
Really?
She was in her early 40s maybe, and about 5 foot nothing, 5'2" or something. And I was giving her the eye. Not too.
Didn't have the same luck with the than you did with the maids, though, right now?
No. Duke might have had better luck.
Well, Bert, this has just been terrific to be not only on the Wild Goose, again, one of my favorite things in all of Newport Beach, but to be here with someone who is a part of the living history of this wonderful ship. Thank you very much for being with us today. And
Thank you, Gary.
and you know, it's got to be great to have you back here on the ship. Must bring back some wonderful memories that you had here with John Wayne.
It does. I like doing these interviews and reminiscing about the trips and the times with the Duke. I'd like to sit off now for Seattle.
You know, commandeer the boat and take it for a ride, huh?
That's right.
Great. Thank you very much, Bert.
Hey, my pleasure.
Well, there you have it. An inside look at this wonderful, historic, and iconic treasure here in Newport Beach. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. This really is a very, very special ship. We'll see you next time on another episode of The Backstory. But before I go, that's for you, Duke.